Hey everyone, today I'm going to teach you how to master Monaco on F1 2025, following my usual video format of going through in granular detail on how to master the track corner by corner, apex by apex, and that is going to be followed up by how you can adjust the time trial world record setup to be good in a racing situation. To wrap up the video will be a full speed lap example done in qualifying mode, so I can show you my ERS strategy and how I maximize the car in that situation as well. So we have arrived at turn 1 to get into the lap breakdown, and this is going to be a very unusual approach to the first braking zone of the lap. You actually want to be using the pit exit. The pit exit is indicated by this yellow line underneath the car. And when you're coming out of the pit lane, you cannot cross this, but when you're on the track normally, you can cross it like we are doing so right now. Of course, if it's a race and the cars are occupying this part of the track by coming out of the pit lane, just take that with caution and move to the outside of the yellow line appropriately, and it won't hamper you too badly. But the reason that you want to be approaching on this line right now is simply because when you get to 65 meters before the corner, you'll be hitting the brake, and of course when you're hitting the brakes you want to travel in a straight line to be maximizing the front axle's grip potential. As you can see right now, we are continuing to travel in a straight line, and we have naturally reached the outside wall because as it turns into us as we get closer and closer towards the apex. Very unusual to have such a curved braking zone in the first turn of a lap, but that's how Monaco is, and it's quite the reason why we love it. It's special, unique, and you have to be thinking on your feet. That rhymed. Anyway, getting back to the point. Turn 1 now, you want to be getting all tyres over the red and white part of the curbing, but do not get too greedy with this, otherwise you will get an invalidation. On the exit, of course, use up all the way to the wall and accelerating up the hill, minimizing the distance as you rise up and over the hill though, quite simply as you want to get close to these barriers, and it'll be minimizing the meters that you have to be traveling around the racing circuit and shaving off fractional time from your qualifying lap, what could be the difference between pole position or not getting pole position. Arriving up to Casino Square, you want to be braking as you get towards this very faded zebra crossing underneath the car, and then you'll be in 5th gear as you carry that a long way through the corner. Really critical to get to the inside apex here, because on the outside of the track it's losing a little bit of camber, but additionally it's a bit more bumpy just marginally on the outside of the track, so keep it tight and then you'll be a-okay. As this curbing ends on the left hand side, you want to go from 5th gear to 4th gear to help aid a little bit extra rotation in the car. The reason you want to do the downshift so late is because the corner feels like it goes on forever, so if you can get that rotation later in the corner to aid staying closer to this inside barrier, it will really help you in your lap time potential. Speaking of this outside barrier, you want to be right up against it as you turn into the following right-hander. This turn has a lot of camber in the road, so you want to utilize that and get as low in the corner as possible so it hooks you around the apex, maximizing your potential. You can nibble this inside curbing, but again it can unsettle the car a little bit, so just play with the fire carefully in that situation. This is a really difficult throttle zone of the lap. As you rise up and over the crest here, it's easy to get a snap of oversteer, so just be careful with how you apply the throttle and run, of course, right up to the outside wall here to maximize the track usage. If you go back in third person camera right now, you can see there's a massive bump in the road. This is because there's a road to the left hand side that naturally connects back to this part of the normal racing track, but of course in a normal day-to-day life around Monaco, this is a street circuit. There we go, got my words out eventually. Back to the point. I always get distracted when doing these things. Anyway, I'm getting myself distracted even more. Okay. Lock in, Brendon. Time to lock in. Anyway, as you can see, you want to be going around this bump. The reason that you want to go around the bump, although you won't really get damage in the F1 2025 video game, you will scrape off a little bit of speed from the car bottoming out across the circuit, and that is, of course, something you want to avoid. So drive around it and then pull the car back to the left-hand side quite aggressively, as now you approach oh so difficult braking zone. You want to be braking about 65 meters before the corner, but this is a corner that's so difficult that in the braking zone that if you want to brake at 70 instead of 60 or 55, you will always be faster in this situation to be too conservative rather than too aggressive. The reason for that is the track falls away from you very, very quickly as you get towards the apex clipping point, so it's easy to overlock the front right tire and then go wide from this point onwards, whereas you want to be keeping the car completely tight to the inside barrier, as what that does is open up the next curve in the straight. I can't call this a corner because it's technically not a corner, but as you can see, we're able to travel in a straight line right now, whereas if we approach from the angle from going wider at the previous corner, that means the car is going to be double loaded and it's going to be really difficult to take this next left-hander flat out in all the situations. Approaching to the hairpin is not really a braking reference to be using on this corner, but you want to take about a car length ahead of these green strips on the road surface, and that is about right for the braking zone. Of course, there's not a distinct point to be braking, but can be good enough as a reference to be running with. Turn in as late as you feel comfortable doing so, because you want to be very, very, very fractionally locking up the rear tires to aid the rotation around the hairpin here. I like to take the hairpin in second gear rather than first gear because it helps with the throttle pickup of the traction on the exit here. You think that this straight is not that important because it's very small, but any wheel spin that you do get will hamper your ability to control the car for the imminent following right-hander. What you really critically need to get to the car on the left-hand side of this solid white line to be opening up the follow right-hander. Is even more critical, in fact, to be getting two wheels on the inside curbing here, as you want to be using up all the track width that you can, because the barrier comes at you very quickly on the outside here. If you do not take the inside curbing, then you are going to be stuck with a boatload of understeer and a car that's approaching the wall very quickly, and you will not be able to get back on the power efficiently. Now approaching the final corner before the oh so famous tunnel here in Monaco. This is a little trick you can be using. There's a service road to the left hand side and you can see the barriers are not completely flat. By using up that little bit of track width right now, you could be opening up the right hander before going towards a tunnel and one of the most critical traction zones of the whole circuit. There is not a distinct braking reference or turn-in reference for this corner, so the wider you can approach it, the better exit that you can get. Avoid taking the inside curbing if you can, as it will unsettle the car, but on the exit, you can take the curbing here if you oh so need to, but better off not to if you can get it in a perfect world, but it won't hamper you really anything more than a quarter of a tenth if you do get up on the outside curbing. Speaking about ideal racing lines though, do not ever go tight in the Monaco tunnel right now, because there's a lot of bumps on the circuit right here and it will be costing you about 1.5 tenths as you run down the straight on this section of track. Try to get the halo of the car or the aerial antenna right ahead of us, where you can see my HUD with the gear display going up through the gears right now, just to indicate it a bit more clearly. If you can get the aerial antenna to be on the solid white line, you have done a really good job with managing the racing line through the tunnel. I'm now approaching up to what is my favourite braking zone on the whole track, to be honest. This is so much fun approaching into this corner. Once again, typical theme of Monaco to not have a distinct braking reference and or turning in reference for a corner, so about 80 meters before the apex, you'll be hitting the brake at full power, then releasing slowly as you get into third gear, and of course try to get as close to the inside barrier as you possibly can. Then through the right hander, try to get your left hand side tires just tickling the yellow part of the curbstone, as this will give you the best opportunity to be taking advantage of the track limits on this year's game. The wider that you go, the slower that you'll go, to be honest, so you have to really risk it and try to get as close to that yellow part of the curbing as possible. On the exit, be patient with the throttle, and your racing line is really important here. Much like corners before that we talked about at the start of Sector 2, then you're going to be wanting to prioritize the exit for the ideal racing line. You want to be traveling in a straight line as you avoid this barrier on the left hand side. If you go wide on the chicane, as you're going to see right now, you're going to be approaching this kink in the track at such an aggressive angle, it's going to be costing you traction potential of the car and hampering your racing line. Up into the back, you will be briefly be in 6th gear, and then you'll be dropping it down to 5th and turning in at a sort of mid to late apex phase. The reason you want to be turning in sort of mid to late is because if you turn in very early, you're going to see the barrier limits your potential to be seeing the rest of the track, and of course if you can't see the track, it's going to limit your confidence to get back on the power and use all the road available to you on the exit. So this is why we turn in a little bit later than you might think that you would want to do so, because if you can see right now, by turning in just a little bit later, the track opens up to you and you can get back on the power. In qualifying, you can tap this outside barrier with the tires and you'll get away with not having damage and possibly gain upwards of 1/10 of lap time potential. So if you can do it, definitely get away with it. Rising through into the swimming pool chicane, you want to be using as much track on the left hand side as possible. Again, no distinct braking reference and or turning in reference, you just want to get as close to the barrier as you possibly can on the inside. And then very similar to the previous chicane, you want to be getting your right hand side tires up on the yellow part of the curbing here to be maximizing the track width potential and using the track limits to the maximum advantage. On the outside, you can hit the outside barrier again with your tires. Do not hit it with your front wing, otherwise you will have heavy risk for damage, but hitting it with your tire is a-okay. On normal damage, on simulation damage, it can be a bit risky, so just bear that in mind. On qualifying though, you want to go all in for that pole position opportunity. Really difficult braking zone. I feel like I've said it a million times already, but no distinct braking reference and or turning in reference for this corner, but you want to be braking earlier than you might think that you need to, because it's so easy to overlock that front right tire and that will just be pushing you wide from the apex. You approach this corner much faster than even I realise, so it's so easy to overestimate the braking zone and run wide as a net result of that. You want to be keeping the car very tight through this corner and get as close to this inside barrier as possible in third gear to help the stability. The track will naturally open up on the exit, and then you want to be keeping the car straight for as long as possible to be building up speed and momentum going into the final apex of the lap. The road rises up here, so it's easy to be losing rear stability and the car to be sliding around, so you actually turn in a little bit earlier than you might think that you need to anticipate for the car sliding around, and you have time to adjust for it. If you turn in too late, you will just be an understeery mess and then risk running so wide on the final corner that it's almost impossible to recover that lap time lost. Of course, get as close to the barrier on the inside as possible, but if you can help it, avoid taking the outside curbing here. As you can see, when we're on top of the curbing, it flicks the car up and it really will not be allowing the tyres to be in contact with the road, what of course will be limiting your traction potential. Open up DRS for the run to the line, and as you can see, minimizing the distance, and this is your low speed lap example here in Monaco, 13 minutes and 39 seconds, and point 2, of course. Going into how to adjust the time trial setup to be good for an online race. Of course, we have 50-50 wings, but the first thing I'll be adjusting is going to be maximum tire pressure. If you're driving on the hard compound tires in the race, your tires might not fully get up to the operating window, but trust me, it's better to have maximum tire pressure, slightly difficult tire temperatures, but it will help your tire wear so much it's more than worth it. Just trust me on that one. Braking bias, you're going to be about 53-54% depending on how much front locking you have. Of course, if you have the front tires locking up regularly, then go down to 53%. Looking at the front ride height, then you're going to be 22 on the front ride height just to help get up and over those curves and be maximizing the track width. Camber geometry looks pretty standard, it was pretty nice, and I would recommend just keeping it how it is. But the off-throttle differential, you'll be looking to go about 30-35% to help the stability of the rear axle of the car over the racing stint as well. So just keep that in mind. But that being said, let's jump over to the full speed lap example in the qualifying session. Here we go then for the full speed lap example here in the qualifying mode. The ERS choice is going to be hot lap mode and the overtake button, simply because there's no need to be efficient, and as you're going to see on every straight, we are holding the overtake button for as long as we can, so it's all about maximum power and you don't have to worry about efficiency. Into turn 1 though, straight line braking, use the curb on the inside, running up against the wall on the exit, rising up through the crest to Casino Square, and down 2 gears into 5th, down to 4th to help the rotation, then open up the car to the right hand side, up and over the crest of the hill, the rear of the car sliding around, lock up the rear slightly on purpose to help the rotation, and do that again in the hairpin, and just kiss the inside curb, keep the car in second for the traction, use the curb on the inside again, flick the car into the right hander, maximum traction as you arrive into the tunnel, up into 7th gear, holding that overtake button, straight line the braking, commit over the curb on the inside, and maximum track width was used there. Into the back, flick down 1 gear into 5th, back on the power, tap the wall on the outside, it's a-okay, you can get away with it in the game. Do the same here in the swimming pool chicane, brake early, super easy to lock the inside tyres here as now you approach the final turn of the lap, back on the power and minimise your distance to the start finish line, and that is a hot lap here in Monaco. And that was actually one of the funnest laps I've had the opportunity to do on the F1 2025 game. Worked out to be a 1 minute 8.3 as we came across the line. Just going through the loading menus right now, and as you're going to see, a 3:07, 3.7 seconds faster than the next quickest AI. We are on 110% as well, so 18.1, a 32.4, and a 17.7 are our sector times for the lap today. But like I say, 110% AI, the hardest in the game, and that is how you're able to master the lap. So that's how you master Monaco on F1 2025, mastering the most difficult qualifying lap of the whole season. And I really hope this video can be helpful, informative, can allow you to gain confidence to master this oh so difficult track. With that being said, I've been Brendon Leigh, and I will catch you in the next video. Grazie, ciao ciao, bye bye.